And this is part 2 with the rain delay. There are many reasons why this video took so long to get out. This whole project took a few turns, sideways and then another sideways. And there are a lot of supplemental videos that will be linked below. There's going to be a main playlist. For instance, I had to do an entire video just on the bolt itself because it was just too long, too much information, but I think it's good information. So I got to put these out as supplemental. There'll still be a main 3-part series as I originally outlined and intended, but there's going to be a lot of links below. Check those and let's get to it. So I wanted to cover the Magwell, follower, and floor plate in the beginning of this part 2. I've got a supplemental video that really goes into depth, and when I was reassembling it here, putting the barrel and receiver back in, and then the receiver seemed to go in just fine, but the follower was jammed. It wasn't in there just right. So I had to try to remove it by loosening the floor plate, lifting up on that, and it was still jammed in there. So then I had to actually remove the receiver again. Now I've had this happen a couple of times. It's rare, but it was interesting. So I put it in this video to show you it can be a problem. You got to line it up and you may have to remove it. Check the spring action of the follower as you're holding it together as you're putting those 2 bolts back in. Next, I was going to cover the bolt teardown. That's in a supplemental video. Check the links. Sight ladder removal and installation is also covered in a separate video. So now I'm going to get into teardown of the stock. I actually did the cutting and sanding myself, and it was based on a previous Sporterized Mauser that I have. I wanted to somewhat copy it. You notice the grooves, the cutouts there. I read in one of those books that it was to lighten the weight of the wood. So I cut it in between those slots in an area where the wood's still fairly solid. And I had an idea of how I'm going to taper it and sand it down and finish the end of it there. All these measurements were beforehand, depending on the length of the barrel, and you'll see the finished product and how I got to that end there. Now when it cut through, I was worried because it ripped off this extra piece of wood, but that's going to be taken out anyways. Got a real nice smell of the oak when this was freshly cut. It was really interesting. I'm sorry, walnut. It was actually the walnut from Italian walnut is what they used on these stocks. Then I wanted to remove the spring pins. There's 2 of them. I got those out. They are blued from the factory. Some are rubbed down to where they got a silver finish on the front. They just pretty much drop right out once you've got that swing swivel or the H-cuff band taken off. They'll just pop right out. And the front, what I'm calling a nose cap, has a pin in it. I used a 1/8 punch, and that's a real thick pin, and that's all that was holding it, and it pretty much came out really easy right after that. Just slid right off. I was inspecting it, looking for any proof marks. There was a lot of scratches and dings, but not much else. It was white from the factory. I have seen some of these blued, but they are white. The H-cuff that covers it is blued from the factory. And the wood itself, just the way it's cut, nice thick structure. Found these proof marks on the end of it. I thought that was interesting. I've never done this, so that was new to me. Now I started taking measurements on the stock to see how I wanted to cut it. I had all kinds of ideas how I was going to do this. I was using speed square, making marks, doing... I'm not a good woodworking guy. I don't know how to do the fine artistic woodworking. So I just got into it. Just started cutting it with my fine tooth saw. And that really did a pretty good job. I was careful everywhere I went because of the grains. I didn't want to split. Did a lot of sanding and more sanding, just hours of sanding there. Got the finished product. I took the Tru-Oil again and coated it many times. It blended right in with the rest of it. I got a nice nose piece on this that I'm really happy with. Okay, here's a little thought process on how to remove the rear sight ladder, what I'm calling a cradle. Some people call it a base or a tube base or something else. I'm calling it the rear sight ladder cradle. That is, what I'm told is soft soldered on the barrel. I've never done this. I have not found a video or a series, anything to really show. I've heard just text on the internet. So I got a heat resistant piece here, this guy, and I've strung the barrel up to a hook on the ceiling, held up by string through the receiver, and a weight dangling from it. So I got a 4-pound weight dangling, and I'm going to try to heat that up while putting weight on it so I don't overheat it. I want to heat it just enough to remove it, so I'm hoping it will drop down over the concentric journals. So this took a lot of heating. I was using propane, not MAP gas. I didn't have a heating gun at this point in time, but that worked better during the replacement of the Sight Ladder Cradle. A lot of heating. I was worried about overheating it, so I was trying to be careful. I could see the solder bubbling out. I knew I was getting close. I was tapping on it. Finally it broke loose. Look at that. Burned myself there. Get it off. Oh, I can't get it off because of the sight. So now I can't get the sight ladder cradle off the front because the front sights are in the way. They stick up too far. It would not fit over it. And I had to remove that before sending the barrel in to get it cut. And I knew the front sights were going to get cut off, so I had no intention of removing them initially. But I also knew they were soft soldered on as well. So I tried to remove the front sights. And boy, oh boy, that was hard too. Right away I could see it start bubbling. Again, I think a heat gun probably would have done a better job. So I'm heating it up and trying to break it loose, tapping on it. A lot of different things that I was trying here. Finally those popped off, and I was able to get the sight ladder cradle off, which I wanted to preserve because that's where the scope mount's going to go. And then I was able to send the barrel in, get it cut down, get it recrowned, and get it threaded. And that took several months before I got the barrel back. There was a lot of back and forth on that, and I think I'll discuss that a little bit later, but I was happy so far with the results. I still have yet to get the suppressor and really try it out. Here's the sight ladder cradle. Let me put some more pictures in here. I think I've got some still photos of it. That soft solder covered all that surface. And I had talked before how the sight ladder screw engages the barrel. Here's the divot, very tiny. And here's some nice proofings that are already visible before removal. So let's talk Headspace for a minute. Before I sent this out to get cut down and threaded, I wanted to check the Headspace. Plus they required me to send them the Headspace gauge because they didn't have one. It's an odd caliber. They had all the others, but so I waited to get mine in. Wanted to check it before I send it, check it when it's returned. If you have a compromised casing that expands or explodes, the gases can come back towards you and shoot the bolt and or metal towards your face. Mauser changed their design. The 1891s were not as safe as these. In the early 1900s, this model, the 1909, has this extra safety lug in orange here. The front two locking lugs are great, but the third safety lug in the back just adds a exponentially higher level of safety to this. Now, I've only seen one in my years of dealing with these. A guy had one that didn't have real good headspace, and he used it regularly, and he was shooting with it. He didn't have a problem. Now, I don't know how many rounds he put through it or what he had done to it. If you get the bolt bent, they usually heat it up to do so, and the change in temperature can make the steel more brittle. I really wouldn't recommend that. That's why I'm not bending the bolt on this one. So I did want to check the Headspace. I am confident in these. I had been using the redneck method for a while, and you can Google that yourself. I don't recommend it, but I have seen it work. Okay, I finally received my Headspace gauge today after 4 months. This is from Pacific Tool. Don't know if you can read that. It says 765 by 53, ARG, abbreviation for Argentine, Max CIP, PTG 3/22. This is a no-go gauge. I did not get a field gauge or a go gauge. I don't think anyone makes those. So, for my go gauges, I've got 2 dummy rounds. One is PPU and one is Norma brass. And they fit slightly different than each other. So with a go round, there's my go gauge. I can close the bolt all the way, just with the finger. So it's got a real good fit. This bolt has the extractor claw removed, so there we've got a little bit tighter of a fit on the Norma brass, and that's how Norma brass does. It's just a good tight fit, slightly right there. That's almost like a good field gauge test to tell me if the headspace is good. Now my no-go gauge, you gotta be careful with these. You don't want to slam anything into these. They are hardened steel, but you want to treat them as if they're glass, is what I've heard. Be very careful with them. So I'm going to push this forward. It's got this spring, so I've got to push it forward. And then with 2 fingers, I get to right there and it stops. Don't want to force it. That's a no-go. If I had a field gauge is kind of an in-between. It means if you're out in the field, you need to shoot, it's okay to shoot, but you might have loose headspace. Next, I had a big long rain delay for your enjoyment, which consisted of trying to get the barrel cut down and threaded. I took it to many different gunsmiths, but they had a huge backlog, 4 or 5 months or longer. I decided to go with the mail order process at threadingcentral.com. And the website they have says 4 to 6 weeks. It took a bit longer. There was some back and forth because this is an odd caliber. And I got the barrel back just over a month ago, and I was on travel at the time. I took the barrel and the Sight Ladder Cradle to my dad's barn. My dad helped me get it back on. We put that square part, top part of the Sight Ladder Cradle in a vise upside down with a couple thin pieces of wood on each side of it to protect it, and heated it with a heating gun, one of those mini like hairdryer looking things. Slid the barrel back in and tapped it with a rubber mallet, and I was able to twist it and adjust it and get the footprint of where it used to exist lined up perfectly. I did not sand it down. I did not add more solder or flux or anything. So I was able to reheat the pre-existing solder and get it in place, and it's held up really well since then. Okay, so we're going to be doing the BadAce mount, scope mount. Comes with this slide piece. You'll notice it's got an edge to it that's going to fit underneath this edge that we discussed in the other videos for the rear sight ladder. This one actually has been done before, so it just slides up in there. It's nice and easy. Some of them you gotta tap them up in there. Now here's the scope mount. Now it's already got a few screws in it. It's got these locking screws on the sides, which are tiny, and they lock this screw into place, which is an adjustment screw. So I had it previously adjusted. So we're going to try and pop it in and see what kind of elevation and you know, I get from the bore laser sight and see how well this does. Now this just fits in between here, where you can see it's already scratched a little bit. There's room enough for it to go in here. Well, might have to give it a tap or two. I think it's been out too long. And then this hole in the very back near my thumb is going to line up with this to hold it down, and then this will be the adjustment for the rock. And then there's also a pin. Once you adjust it, the pin goes in pretty easy, but once you adjust it, it's going to put tension on it. It's going to hold that pin in there permanent. So I'm going to try right there. Let's see how that lines up. It's pretty flush over here, pretty flush over here. Once I secure it down in here with this screw, which the kit from BadAce came with this screw. Now I gotta find my star wrench that goes in there. And actually, I'm gonna end up having to redo this with some Loctite. I'm gonna use Vibra-tite. This Vibra-tite is what they recommend. Medium strength, removable, resistance, demountable. So this is a good one. We're going to lock that down once I get it zeroed in. I need my Allen wrenches. I need my star bits. I don't know which one fits this. I guess I just happened to find the right one. So I'm going to tighten this down to a point to where I'm not sure where, until this adjustment screw hits, I guess. I think I might even already have Loctite and Vibra-tite on the adjustment screw. Maybe that's why I believe this is set. I can't remember how I took it apart because it's been so long. It took me so long to get my barrel cut down. And okay, you don't want to over tighten this, because what will happen is you'll get a bow in that. And I like to take my T-square and actually test it out, because you're going to get a little bit of a, well, let's see, there's a screw head slightly sticking up, causing it just to rock, just, you know, not even a 32nd of an inch maybe. I don't know if you can see that. So there's a little bit of rocking going on, but once you put the scope mounts on here and you tighten that up, it's going to pull it up in that direction too. This pin should be fairly tight, and guess what? It's not. I'm worried about that. That needs to be a little more secure, and I think it will secure when the scope mount is tightened down more. That's pretty secure. I don't want that vibrating loose. So I might end up putting some Vibra-tite on that too. I don't want to, but that pin is not really wedged in there good enough. Onward and upward. Let's do the scope. That is the BadAce Scope Mount. It is a long eye relief one that's going to fit inside the rear sight cradle. The reason I did not tap and drill the receiver is specifically for this scope. Alright, I've got the scope ready. I've got my nice neoprene scope cover, which I actually like. I'll show you that later in another video, why I like that. To me, it works. Some people like other types. So these rings should be already on the tube in a proper fashion. I like to put the mount in the back slot. In this slot, there's only those options really for this type of mount, and so you're limited on your tube travel between your scope rings. Keep that in mind. You're going to be limited here with where it's going to sit. There are very few scopes on the market that are long eye relief scopes. This particular one is the Scout. It's the Vortex Scout, and there's two Vortex Scouts. I've actually got a part number for you. CF2 31002. CF2-31002. And there'll be a link below for the Scout. And I'm doing this right. We should be gripping her pretty good. I like to get the eyepiece level with the, or horizontal alignment with this part of the receiver, pretty much. So that's why it's pretty far back. But when I get the right cheek weld in there, it's gonna line up pretty good. So you end up with a lot longer eye relief when you look down the barrel. I know this is funny looking now, but when I get the suppressor on the front of it, it's going to lengthen it, of course, so it's going to look a little different. And I got to take it out and test shoot it. I'm real eager to do that. So, okay, let's wrap this up. I did not want to bore you with all the tedious scope adjustments. I'll get a little more in depth in the next video in part 3. Good news! Good news! My NFA stamp got approved just the other day. So my suppressor is in the mail, and part 3 will be out soon. This took many months to make. Here's almost the finished product. And next we'll go into more detail about the behavior, the firing and adjustments on it. The first set of testing after I put it back together came out a really nice group. That's at 100 yards, and that is a 18-inch tall target, so it's not full size. These are 3-inch diameter, not radius, diameter circles. So that is a sub-MOA grouping. Awesome. And the next video is coming real soon. Thank you.